welcome back to Morning Express right here on KTN. It is now 7:09 a.m. on this 29th day of October, Tuesday, and it's time to get into our discussion. We'll be bringing your money later on with Bonnie Tunya on the show. But first, to get to our discussion of the day, remember today in our question of the day, we are asking you what should be done to diffuse religious tensions over at the coast. That is a question we're asking you, of course, based on what we've seen play out over the past couple of weeks and months over the coast, and it's a situation that is now becoming worrying, causing a lot of concern around the country, and it is one we are bringing and paying close attention to today. It's front and center on the show, and want you to be part of our discussion. That is the question. Let us know what your thoughts are. 22155 is our SMS number. At KTN Kenya is our Twitter handle. You can also tweet me directly at Sophia Wanuna. Remember, the hashtag is Morning Express KTN. And before I introduce you to my guests and we get to the discussion, there is that statement that was made the day before yesterday by one of the bishops in Mombasa during a burial, of course, following the killing of one of the pastors there. And it's the call for the guns. The pastors, some religious leaders, church leaders want to be given AK-47s. Let's just hear what he said so that we are not misquoting anybody and we get exactly his words, because he'll be joining us also on this show. Kanisa iwe na AK-47. Later on in that speech, you talked about ushers being given those AK-47s as well. Let me get to introduce my guest this morning, and I'll start with right here in studio. I'm joined by the senator over in Mombasa, Hassan Omar. Thank you for making time for us this morning, Bona Senator.
Thank you, Sophia. And
also Sheikh Ibrahim Lithome is part of our panel this morning. Asante sana.
Thank you, Sophia.
And over in Mombasa, we are joined by Bishop Mbela. He's our office in Mombasa. He is the man who made that statement. They won the AK-47s. Bishop, good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine this morning.
Thank you for making time for us, and I'll start this interview with you, Pastor. You want AK-47s to protect yourselves. Why is it? Why go to that extreme, AK-47s?
Okay, thank you for that question, Sophie. Let me start by explaining something. There was a statement that was quite long that actually I was reading from. But of course, when the media reported, they only reported a small portion of the whole thing that I said. I had started by saying that the government has a responsibility to put 24-hour armed security on our churches. I said from Monday to Sunday and from January to December, because we have the right to be protected as taxpayers. And then I said, because we do understand that there is a constraint in our security forces, and because even we don't even have enough policemen on the ground, and I said, should this thing not be possible, then let the government arm every church with an AK-47. And I was specific. I did not say let the government arm the pastors. I said let the government arm the churches, because we are looking at the protection of our members as such.
All right, Bishop, so you're saying that in case of the issue of numbers in terms of manpower and police officers to be able to hold fort in terms of security in churches, but we heard you also talk about ushers being given these firearms. So who exactly will have these assault weapons? If you're saying on one hand you understand that there's an issue of personnel with the police, but you also were talking about ushers having these firearms.
Yes, because I understand it is not practical, for example, should we ever reach that point, and which I believe we shouldn't reach, I understand that it is not possible for a pastor to be preaching with an AK-47 slung over his shoulder. And that's what I was saying. Let the ushers be given those things so that they are on guard as the pastors are preaching, so that should there be an incident, maybe somebody wanting to take advantage of the congregation and trying to attack, then that person at least can bring a deterrent action even before the security forces arrive to take charge.
All right, Bishop, we'll continue to engage you on this. Stay with us. Let me now come back to the studio and I'll start with you, Senator. Ushers to hold AK-47s in church for protection. What do you have to say about that?
I think when you're charged with certain responsibilities, Senator, religious leaders, you really have to coach what you say in public domain. Whereas that could have been probably a discussion within certain echelons in terms of enhancing security at places of worship. It becomes really careless to make those kinds of utterances in a manner as to spur tensions. I think we have to realize the coast has a lot of diversity. We have seen a lot of verbs thrown even to members of our faith. We have acted with a lot of restraint because we realize that our leadership positions have a calling of a certain nature. If you say that there are certain threats, there are sheikhs who've been executed over the past couple of months and years, then you will be saying that they need to walk with tanks because every other time they're shot in their cars. So I think, the primary responsibility of security is a purview of the government. And I think what we need to do is to enhance our security, both in a proactive and a reactive sense. Proactive in the sense that we need to ensure that every Kenyan does feel safe. Whether it's a sheikh, whether it's a pastor, whether it's a church, whether it's a mosque, they should all be given the kind of, they should be accorded the comfort zone that their government and their security apparatus are working.
All right.
Therefore, I think what I will do, because I have a broader responsibility than the pastor or the bishop, is that to appreciate the kinds of challenges that we face and to see how we can strengthen and enhance efforts to ensure that there is security for all and to enhance, the sanctity of human life and the protection of property. Because I think you also have to realize the sanctity of human life, that a couple of sheikhs have lost their lives and others mysteriously disappeared. What we have in this country is to sweep some of those issues under the table because the country is angry and anxious about this broad purview of fighting terrorism, to a point where we forget that we have certain constitutional values that we hold dear.
Okay, Sheikh, you've seen, of course, some members of your religion in the past killed and attacked, and we've seen these two pastors tragically killed in the coast as well. And to hear the pastors, and we're hearing even now the bishop talking about arming of ushers. These are just ordinary mwananchi in church who's serving God, holding an AK, an assault rifle. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Whereas I would want to appreciate that sometimes when you lose a member of your congregation or maybe a leader in your congregation, naturally there is that anguish. But again, as the senator said, you see, when you are leaders, I think we have to be careful with what we say. It's wrong for the sheikhs to be killed. No explanation is given. And when there is no explanation given, particularly by the authorities that are charged with the responsibility of protecting the mwananchi and also finding out when something like that happens, there is bound to be this kind of tension. But I think instead of calling for religious communities or religious institutions to carry arms, I think number one, we should remind the government of their responsibility, constitutional responsibility, to protect everybody in this country and their properties. And then we need also to address, as leaders, religious leaders, political leaders, or any leaders, we need to address the root causes of all what is happening. Why people are gunned down, whether in the mosque or in the road or as they are traveling, in places of worship like the churches, why are churches burned down, and whatever is happening in the country has to be addressed. We need to address the root cause. I don't think calling for arms in churches or other places of worship, because tomorrow, if the churches say we want to be armed, what will stop the mosque from saying we also want the imams and the muaddin, those people who call for prayers in the mosque also, they want to be armed, and those who sweep the mosque want to be armed? Where shall we be heading to? And I think here we need to pin down the government, remind them you have a primary responsibility to protect everybody here. There is no running away from that responsibility. And then as leaders, let's sit down together, talk with each other, not at each other, because I can see now we're almost talking at each other. Address the root causes of all what is happening, not only at the coast. Okay, it's unfortunate that in the recent past, a lot has been happening in the coast, which is now building up this tension. But in the whole country, we need to address the root causes. Yeah.
Indeed, and we'll talk a little bit more about those root causes. But Bishop, you're still with us. I want to bring this back to you because following your pronouncements, there's been a lot of, clash in terms of just what people have to say about those remarks, saying that the church should rely on God, the Holy Spirit, for protection. So to take this to the extent, and that you still hold the position that ushers should be the ones holding and bearing these firearms in church, and as we're hearing Sheikh now talking about the fact that government and these security forces should be the ones really carrying out this responsibility, are you saying as a church, as your particular church and those leaders who are calling for this have lost complete faith in the government, and even more so God, the protector, which is the message you preach every Sunday, no?
Well, let me explain something here about the church and what we believe in. I have heard a lot of people make comments about us losing faith in God. I've heard people say we need to be protected by the Holy Spirit, we need to be covered by the blood of Jesus Christ, and so we don't need these things. But I'd like just to explain that further. Many of those people, I believe all the so-called Christians and the Christians, none of them goes to sleep at night and leaves his door open just because he has prayed and he believes the Holy Spirit is on duty. None of the Christians, including the bishops and many others, will leave their houses open on Sunday to go to church to worship God, and because they know when they come back, they will not find their houses intact. Although they are saved, they pray, but they still lock their houses. None of them will leave their cars with their alarms and armed and just leave the doors open because this car belongs to a Christian, this car belongs to a saved person, and therefore God is going to take care of the car. That is not the issue, because the protection here is twofold. There is the protection of the soul, and there is the protection of the body. And I must say, it is inherent in every person, every creature, to preserve and to fight natural death. That is why people take those measures.
Bishop, I want to jump in.
Proper to say.
I want to jump in there, Bishop, and just ask, isn't this though an extreme measure? And I think that's the biggest concern, because it's unfortunate. It was a tragic, incident, the killing of the two pastors. But the thing is, we've seen several of these things happen, and of course the law and the police have to investigate, and those, of course, culpable brought to book. But to go to such a measure, it really is extreme. And I mean, what you're saying, arming ushers in church, how is that going to work? Are they going to walk around with AK-47s as you preach? Really, how is that supposed to work in a context of a Sunday church service?
Okay, I still reiterate that was a last measure. Should the government fail to protect us, should the government fail to protect the churches adequately, then let them do that. But now, because now everybody seems to have taken the last resort as the real issue, let us tackle it from there then. The thing is, nothing is too extreme if it is going to protect human life. As long as we are dealing with human life here, I don't believe nothing is too extreme. And some people have been saying like the church may be revenge. We've got nothing to revenge about, because here there are three things we are looking at. Some people considered it to mean attacking, others considered it to mean self-defense, Others consider it to mean revenge. But we are talking wholly on the level of self-defense against any attack.
All right, Bishop. Senator, the root cause, I mean, that has been the biggest question. And this, of course, conversation came back after the killing of the sheikh about a month, 2 months ago. And that even after a year, when another sheikh was killed, Rogo, and still Kenyans don't know what happened, who killed him. We've seen fingers pointed at the police. Of course, the police have said they have nothing to do with that. But in terms of answers for these killings, we don't get them. And so there's all this tension and all this suspicion among the residents at the coast. What is the problem? Why are there no answers coming forth?
First and foremost, just back on that original point, the original point of discussion, it's not going to happen. You can be sure that no government, unless it's kangaroo. So I want people not to escalate this debate or the tensions around it, because the potential of that now is to find a battery of Muslim leaders coming up or other political leaders.
But then what do you tell the bishop? Before we continue, what do you tell the bishop and those calling for this?
We are a fiercely democratic nation.
Yeah.
And as a fierce Democrat, we must be able to entertain all opinions, extreme as they might be. That is the nature of our democracy. I think we've had opinions to various extremes, and I'm a person based on my background who entertains that freedom of speech. But that freedom of speech must be carried out with some level of responsibility. But also reciprocating the fact that I work with one of the arms of government that will have to make those decisions. I believe the representatives who represent the broader spectrum of the Kenyan people are sober enough not to know that that solution is no recourse. Absolutely. So therefore it will be treated with the kind of contempt as an opinion that was aired one day and fizzled out the other. But that said and done, I think you're right. I think, as Sheikh Ledome has said, that we need to go back to the basics and the dynamics. I think in coast generally, we have lived under a purview of victimization, marginalization, and all the social conditions that contribute to the level of social instability are prevalent, particularly in Mombasa. Unemployment, undereducation, poverty, all these are factors that contribute to radicalization. And therefore what we need to do is to start to mitigate around these factors. First and foremost, I believe you build a just and equitable society where everybody feels ownership to this society. Much in the same way, there's ignorance about whether Islam is synonymous with terrorism. There's also ignorance within part of the Muslim community that we believe that the other side is our enemy. So therefore, that said and done, I think we need to start educating our masses first and foremost, to arm them with the tools of information, so that they can undertake their principal responsibility. But then to the levels of insecurity, we say it in the legal terms, and Sheikh Lidome is also a lawyer. Either by commission or omission, the government is guilty of or is responsible for the security of all Kenyans. And therefore, whether you committed the act or you did not commit it as a government, by omission or commission of your responsibility, then that prevalence of insecurity is a direct consequence of your failure to deliver on your mandate. I have tried to engage all the actors at national and county level. We are extremely anxious about and concerned about this whole situation. We are trying to create a broad framework upon how to engage security actors and to engage the various formations of the society in Mombasa, so that we can be able to start now addressing the root causes. But the security must provide answers to the execution of Sheikh Rogo, to the recent executions of the 4 sheikhs, notwithstanding what you feel or what public opinion was created around these people. You know, public opinion can never be used as the gauge to depart or to defer from our constitution or to vacate it. Therefore, I know that there's a lot of public anxiety and public opinion that has been generated against a section of the Muslim community based on, or particularly on the Westgate attack. But unfortunately, the constitution is never suspended. The constitution applies even at times of war. And therefore, it is inherent that the critical answers to these murders are given. And if not, then we must see people taking responsibility. If you cannot answer these grave instances of insecurity, then you also have to do the ultimate and take political responsibility for it. Or so that we must see in this country people resigning from their jobs because they were unable to contain the levels of insecurity. Therefore, then they will work harder. In fact, I think, my view, the president might be missing on a very important opportunity to reorganize the security apparatus rather than be defensive about some of the things that you've heard on the KTN media. I think you use that as an opportunity to reorganize and free yourself of the bondage of the spillover of the past
Senator,
regimes.
What is your role as the leadership in Mombasa County? Because you've brought in the issue of the national government, of course, security under that, but also your leadership, you, the governor, and the other leaders in Mombasa. What is your role to ensure that at the end of the day, this demand, this pressure to have these situations resolved? Because at the end of the day, the pressure and the tension is mounting in Mombasa.
We first and foremost, we continue to demand answers in our own structured way from the government about what interventions have taken place to date, and are calling for further investigations or independent arms of investigations. I remember the good director of public prosecution set up a panel to investigate the Sheikh Rogo initial death. And therefore, we say we want teams of independent persons who have the capacity for criminal investigations to be able to now follow up the trail of these murders. And maybe this trail might be connected to the last trails. So therefore, this kind of situation. But on the part of myself and the governor, I think what we have done is to commit to a broad process that is inclusive of all stakeholders and formations of the Mombasa society to start to address these things critically from an intellectual, political, and social dimension, so that then we can have a broad agenda in terms of how we pursue the issues of insecurity in Mombasa.
Right. Sheikh, I want to bring you in on this one because we've had Senator talk about the role of the police and how important and crucial that is. And I remember even the last time we had a discussion, you're talking about the authorities and how important it is for them to take up their role. But recently we saw the police arrest a Sheikh in Mombasa. And after his arrest, then there were running battles between the police and the youth protesting against that arrest. So the police then, in essence, would argue, well, we are trying to sort out this situation, we have not been allowed to do our work, or rather it becomes again an issue of furthering and deepening that tension.
I think we need to look at it beyond just that one incident, and just look at number one, do the people have confidence in for example, the police force anymore? And this is one of the root causes I wanted to address here. When people perceive the police as being biased, or they have no confidence at all that they are going to do justice, then there is a problem here. So they arrest a sheikh. People will ask themselves, when Sheikh so-and-so was gunned down, what did the police do? Did the police provide answers? There were no answers that were provided. Sheikh Samir and other sheikhs disappeared. We were told no stone would be left unturned. It's over 1 year. So the police need, first of all, to win the confidence of the people, so that when people see the police taking action, they'll know that justice will be done here, the rule of law will be applied here fully. But when the police is always associated with doing things in a wrong way, not caring about the law at all, it leads to what we are seeing. People have lost confidence in the police. So that is one thing that need to be addressed, so that we have the respect of the police. I'm arrested by the police, I'll be subjected to the rule of law. If I'm innocent, I'll be acquitted. If I'm guilty, I'll be subjected to the rule of law. So that is one thing. Then we need also to look at these perceptions and biases that are there now. Today, when you talk about terrorism, it's always associated with Muslims, which I think is wrong. And as the senator rightly said, it's like we always perceive now the people on the other side as our enemies. So I think we need to do something about that. We need to bring people to talk to each other. We need to bring the youth together, tell them there is no problem between us and people of other faiths. What does our religion say about living with people of other faith? What about the respect for places of worship? And it should be both ways, Then this will reduce the tensions. Then careless utterances from across the religious divide. I think religious leaders have to be careful, because we are dealing with the youth. We are dealing with people who might have their own personal problems. So we have to measure the words we use and think before we talk. What will be the effect of what I say to the people? How will it be taken? And what will be the consequences? So I think we need to look at it we need to look at that big picture. Like people would want to say, somebody was arrested in the mosque by the police. Police were doing their work. After all, these are law enforcement agencies. Why did the youth react in the way they reacted? So we should not just look at it that way. We should look at it. We should look at the bigger picture. Yeah.
All right, Bishop, I want to come to you now, and you, of course, have been watching the news and just seeing the kind of backlash your statement has elicited across the divide, and we're also hearing the senator saying there is no way what you're proposing will happen. Do you, since making those remarks, regret making them, and is there a different solution you and those for that position think can be taken? Is there no other method? You'd said that's one of the last resort, but what are the other proposals you'd make? And even now, as you have this opportunity to speak to viewers who are listening to you this morning, because that was quite extreme and has been criticized by very many people.
Yeah, that is true. I understand what I said has really gone down the wrong way to some people. But you see, there are some issues here that have been long running and have never been solved. You see, history is a very powerful tool. History causes you to, it determines the way you act today, and history will also determine what decisions you make for tomorrow. As much as I understand the pain that our Muslims brothers felt when their sheikhs were killed, but there are some questions that are begging for answers. Why is it always that whenever they are demonstrating against the murder of one of their own, these so-called youth always go to burn our churches? Now this leaves us with no other conclusion to say there could be another hidden agenda, because the church has got nothing to do with anybody who has been killed. It has happened before and before and before. Churches have been burned, looted, not once, not twice. So now we have left with no other option but to say, I think there's something here. Why do they always target churches? Why have never ever been having a simple, even a mosque, ever been banned when they are demonstrating? It is only the churches. So with this concern, there are some things that I think we need to address. Because of talking about religious tolerance, there are some things that must appear to be done. There are concessions that must be made if you're going to have very, very peaceful coexistence here down in Mombasa at the coast. For example, there are issues that we have been raising all over the time and time again, and I've been talking about it, and let me mention it here so that we may be able to solve it together. There are these people who have been contributing to the demeaning, blaspheming against Christian faith, Christian religion. There are people who are always preaching against Christians by the road. They call themselves Wacha Biblia Iseme, Mihadhara. And when you hear them talk, they are always castigating, criticizing the Christian faith. They are calling Christians names, and it is going openly. Now, if this thing is not stopped, it is going to bring a bigger divide between these two religions. Why can those people be reined in? And if there is no law to prosecute them for preaching against another person's religion, then the law should be made in Parliament to take them off the roads, because of late they have contributed to the escalation of the tension in this region. Because I believe if somebody wants me to join his religion, then I think he should show me peace, he should show me love, he should preach from his book and tell me how good his religion is, rather than coming and taking my Bible and telling me that I'm an infidel and then telling me to join his religion. That is bringing animosity. And I pray that let the government enact the law to just remove those people from the streets. Then we can begin to see more peaceful coexistence.
All right, Bishop, you brought in some important sentiments, and I want to bring it back to you both. I'll start with you, Sheikh, because the question, and we did talk about this at some point, and you know, the interesting part and what he's bringing out is that in what makes somebody think there is honor in going to burn a church? Because he's making a valid argument. Yeah. We don't see mosques getting burnt, but he's very, upset, and very many people are, because you keep seeing churches getting burnt and all that happening.
Okay. Number one, I want to put it very clearly here to the viewers and to the pastor that nobody has sat down and told anybody, go out there and burn the the church. This is very unfortunate, and let me tell you, Islam would be the last religion to ever advocate for such crime.
But
there is a respect, just a minute, Sophia. There is a Islam teaches us to respect property and more so places of worship. Doesn't matter whether that place of worship belongs to a faith that is not your faith. Actually, the teaching of our religion is that we should give each other space. Lakum dinukum waliya din. You have your faith, I have my faith. As long as you don't interfere with my faith and my place of worship, I should respect. That is the teaching of Islam. So it's unfortunate. This is a criminal act, and we do not condone it. But again, you've talked about history, and the pastor is talking about history. I don't know why we want to forget that. In 2001, a mosque was burnt in South Sea. The South B, a mosque was burnt down here by people, and we don't want to believe that they were Christians. We want to believe those were hooligans, because I don't believe Christianity would advocate for such a thing. And I think when we are on a national TV like this, we should not be seen to be like we want to talk about our faith and defend our faith. Number one, we have a country here to protect. So as leaders, I think instead of talking about each other's faith, and I want to talk about those who preach in the streets against Christianity and they talk bad about Christianity.
Yes.
I don't know whether the pastor also is deliberately forgetting that in most of these faith-based radio stations, in fact, I entered into a place and there was Hope FM. There was a discussion. I just walked out. I didn't even do the shopping because the kind of vile that was coming, the kind of talk about against Islam that they were using was very wrong. So it's both ways. It's both ways. And I think I agree with the pastor. We need to take care of such utterances. If I want to attract people to my religion, I should talk about the good things about my religion, not the bad things about other people's religion. So I want to agree with him. We need to do that. And just like some Muslims are doing it, Christians are also doing it. You just need to tune to any of these radio stations and you'll find it's happening. So these things are happening. So as leaders, I want us to look at the bigger picture. I think there is a deliberate move somewhere, and we are playing into this trap to put a wedge between Muslims and Christians.
And when you say somewhere, where is that? Who is that? Who
I don't know. I don't know. We have people, we have an intelligence. We have intelligence in this country. Somebody is being paid to collect intelligence information. I don't want to take up that responsibility. Gishangi should take up that responsibility and tell us who is this. And we should not allow people to, we should not allow anybody to destroy this country by drawing a wedge between Muslims and Christians. Yes.
And I'll bring it to you, Senator. Do you agree? Do you feel, do you get the sense, because it does appear so, that some person somewhere, some people somewhere are keen and hell-bent on ensuring there's this rift between that? And even as you answer that, Senator, he's mentioned something about what principally Islam teaches, and of course it's, you know, being good to everybody and all these very good positive traits, just like Christianity does. But at the end of the day, we cannot escape from the fact that there is someone somewhere teaching people that there is some honor, that when this happens to your religion, you go ban this, you go do this. Someone somewhere is diverting, changing the message, twisting it around, although that is not what in essence it is.
You know, there's also blanket victimization of Muslims in this country, and profiling and stereotyping. That's part of it. Why don't you look at that Muslim also as a Kenyan, and say that this is a Kenyan youth who's engaged in crime? You see, when you start to call, you know, you call somebody a Samburu raider, you create a perception all Samburus are raiders. So therefore, I think yet when somebody is committing crimes, you don't give in Nairobi, you don't give him the ethnic group, characterization. So what we have done is either deliberately or subconsciously to profile people. And let's face it, I'm not trying to justify any act of violation, but we have had reprisal against Muslims for very innocent acts individually. The fact that a mosque was not burnt. We've had the honor of our sisters desecrated. People have beaten them on the streets, and we all know it. Just by the mere fact that they're putting on hijabs. Some have been harassed, some have been, intimidated. So therefore, I think rather than start to manifest all these arguments, it will be endless. It is a question of, as a leader, the context at which we live in, what do we do? And I don't want to blame some evil genius somewhere. All I want to do is to say that there is an existing problem. And I think this is a whole discourse in international purview. People go into research They do studies. They commission their intellectuals. The universities must be aggressive now in terms of studying this human behavior. And then finally, knowing where our failures are as a society generally. Because this is a failure of society in terms of the creation of a nation state. It must amalgamate into something where everybody feels the ownership. Why doesn't you live in a family, definitely? Why don't you guys go around breaking your TVs at home? Because if anybody was to attack the honor or integrity of your family, you will stand as one. Because that's the unity you've created over time. The love that you've generated, the kind of religious or social values that you reflect. So I think what happens is this calls for a review and a holistic approach in all the facets of our society, so that we manifest ourselves as a society. We can't love each other just by being in a media and telling each other that we need to be one, cohesive, we are one. The only person that day when we were having the prayers that we had who said we are not one was the Chief Justice. He said we are not one. Let's not cheat ourselves. Let's start from zero and work towards being one. Okay. But you see this thing of saying that we have to don our national flag or to put a flag in our homes to show that we are Kenyans. That is simply simplistic. What we need to do is to get to the root of the problem, get into the cardinal values and philosophy of the Constitution, justice and equality for all, equal opportunity for everybody. And therefore, that on the basis of that, you start a premise where everybody can have confidence in their government, that it is their chief protector, chief defender, their last line of attack, of defense, and their first line of attack. And until that happens, as Sheikh Ibrahim said, when you summon me as a police that is already perceived to be biased, I do not believe that you're looking for any justice for my sheikhs. Right. So that kind of a situation, I think, is paramount in this, in building the Kenya we want.
And let's cross to Mombasa. Bishop, you mentioned something about, and the Sheikh has responded to that as much as you're saying on one hand, the Muslims will go around speaking messages against the Christians, we've seen this play out as each religion seeks to get converts into their side. It's also now part of the reason why we're seeing all this tension, because then it becomes an issue of preaching a message that antagonizes the other group. So is there a middle ground that, yes, you can seek converts, but not necessarily antagonize or paint the Muslims in bad light? Because we see that happening in churches, and as the Sheikh has also mentioned, in radio stations, Christian radio stations, painting a very bad picture of the other religion. So what middle ground can be found? Because then each has a role to play to ensure you're preaching your message, but at the same time being respectful of those who do not necessarily subscribe to your religion.
Okay, thank you for that question. Let me first of all begin by talking about evangelism. The Christian faith, when we preach, we strictly preach from the Bible. We tell people about the love of God, and we tell them about forgiveness of sin. We tell them about the mercy of God. And if there's anything that evangelism paints a very big picture of, it is the miserable person who is bound in sin. And we tell them about the love of God and the peace and the forgiveness. And that is how we get our converts. We do it on a person-to-person basis. We do it through tracts, literature. We do it in our big open-air campaigns, popularly known as crusades. But now, my concern about the other side, the Muslims, is that these people that I'm talking about, who are all over this town of Mombasa, is they stand by the roadside, then they open a Quran, they open the Bible.
I'll stop you there, Bishop, I'll stop you there because you said something about how you do it. But that can be you, perhaps that's what you do. But you cannot make a blanket statement for all other Christians and all other pastors and reverends and bishops around the country, because it does happen. We have seen, and the Sheikh has given an example of one of the radio stations that was speaking, very negative messages against the Muslims. So you cannot say it does not happen. It takes place, that there is that, messages that are going out there against the Muslims as well. So as much as you say you have come across Muslims around Mombasa speaking against the Christians very strongly, but I hope you are not also trying to say that the Christians are not doing the same in trying to get converts to their side.
Okay, what I'm saying then, let me put it straight to you. It is wrong for anybody to preach his religion by antagonizing another religion. My stand is anybody who preaches about his faith should strictly stick to his faith and tell about the goodness of his faith and everything else without antagonizing the other religion. I agree with the Sheikh. Anybody who antagonizes another religion, is it on radio, is it through print media, either in the social media, actually it is wrong and it should not continue.
All right, and before I come back here, I just want to read for you something today that's in the Standard, and it's just some of the reactions we're getting from the coast regarding what you said. And Mombasa Catholic church leaders are opposed to what you're proposing, and they're saying that as leaders of the interfaith group, we have never met to discuss the matter. So whilst we have this forum now on television, I'll pose this to each of you, and I'll begin with you, Pastor Bishop. There's not been a lot of support for your position, even with your fellow Christian church leaders, but also has there been any form of coming together as leaders, as church leaders, Muslim leaders, the religious leaders, and the government, and even perhaps the security agencies?
Well, everybody is entitled to his own opinion. There are people who will not agree 100% in everything. That happens everywhere, even in the political world. Even in political parties, there are always people who will always take a different stand from another stand. But that does not water down the truth about the need of what we are saying now. There is a security need. There is a threat of a security. We have seen it. And definitely these things will have to be addressed sooner or later. So some people's opinions, they can keep them to themselves because they're entitled to them. We cannot agree 100%.
Bishop, yes, you cannot agree 100% at all times, but the question is, have you as a Redeemed Gospel Church and your leaders made an effort to meet the leaders, the Muslim leaders, the government, in trying to find a solution, a different way of handling this issue in Mombasa?
Thank you. We have been having several forums as long as I can remember. We have been having dialogue now and then. This is not something that we are just starting today. As a member of the Mombasa Church Forum, we have been meeting with Muslims, we have been meeting with government officials. I don't need to go into some of those details because then we'll be talking about other issues that I should not be speaking over them now because we are on air. But we have been meeting on several forums and we have discussed these issues. They are aware and we are very much close together working to see actually a solution found in this thing.
All right, Senator Ock, let me bring it to you. And he says there have been meetings, but clearly these meetings are not bearing any fruit. Have you been part of any of these sessions?
I think it has to be a process. What has happened is the governor and I have committed to the fact that we will create a joint forum. There are already existing initiatives that we found there. Okay. That's CICC, for instance, being one of them, the Coast Interfaith Council of Clerics, and a lot of other initiatives that that do take place where it tries to foster a certain level of dialogue. We cannot get complete harmony when it comes to religion. That you have to realize. But we can tamper down with the suspicions and the designs of hatred. So I think that's said and done. We need to continue with these initiatives without giving up. Means because also maybe that we are not doing enough. Maybe we need to do much more. And I think, contrary to the vilification of Islam, I mean, across the world, it still is, and by the statistics even of the Vatican, it is still the fastest growing religion in the world. So therefore, there is something also that we do right as Muslims. Okay. And therefore, what I need us to appreciate is sometimes the richness of our diversity, and to be able to also pick on the good sides of what the diversity is all about. We are in a very interesting position. We are one of the counties in this country that has all of the diversities when it comes to religion, when it comes to race, when it comes to ethnicity. And therefore, as a leader of a county of that kind of diversity, it gives you a very interesting format about developing models about coexistence. But I believe fundamentally, it must then be a responsibility of state to ensure county governments, national government, to ensure that we have, and I keep repeating this, justice and equity as the foundations of our nation state, where people get an equal opportunity. The states discharges its responsibility, and we have justice for all, and everybody can be confident to operate under that order.
I want you to make your closing remarks as you respond to this, because somebody the other day was posing a question: why is it that when you have some of these incidences in Mombasa, the Masjid Musa Mosque keeps coming up in terms of, rowdy youth and this happening? First on that, and also the other question is that in many cases, and as Sheikh will attest to this, we know and they're known those that are radicalizing the youth, those that are preaching what really in essence will end up messing the minds of the young people. Why isn't anything being done to those people? Why isn't justice being taken up?
Because you see, the nothing that they do cross the parameters of the law. Just because you don't like an opinion doesn't make it radical. Nothing that they do. And in fact, it is much in the same way we heard about Sakina Mosque with IPK in those yesteryears. Masjid Musa is a decent mosque like all other mosques in this country. If their sheikhs decide to preach certain things that we do not like, it does not make it any less a mosque. And I think what has happened is we need to have that strength as a democracy to be able to appreciate some of the most extreme views. If a Muslim religious leader had talked about guns in this country, he would have been summoned by now. I said this to a friend of mine yesterday, because it will have been called Al-Shabaab, extremism, etc. We even know situations where people felt some of the journalists, even in this media house, sympathize with certain, radical groups just because they are Muslims, and yet they have done an objective story and they've done similar stories in the past. So I think that's the issue of stereotyping in this country. So it's a whole discourse, as I kept saying. And I think I will not want any mosque to be profiled or any particular youth in Majengo to be profiled. And in fact, the police must acknowledge, and I will say this, that these youth have the avenues offered by the Constitution to ventilate your anger are the avenues of peaceful civil disobedience or mass action or protest. It is a thing guaranteed in the Constitution.
Right.
So when you seal these avenues, then you let the tempers blow off. That's when now we have destruction, we have radicalization to the extreme. And you see, we have to also see the actions that we do could equally be radicalizing enough. When you appear to that people can be afforded no justice, people can be afforded no transparency, no answers to instances of grave insecurity and loss of human life. When all these things do happen, then you lose the confidence, and therefore nobody can ever. That radicalizes people enough to feel that they're not part of a very broad thing called the Kenyan nation. But I'm very hopeful as a senator of Mombasa County that our county will still be the county number one. Constitutionally we are county listed as number one. So I think these are just challenges we will be able to surmount.
Okay, Sheikh, I'll come to you also as you wind up. There was a poll conducted by Synovate last week, and in that they found that about 50% of the people in Mombasa feel that the Mombasa Republican Council represents their interests best in the county. So that's surpassing the police, the leaders and all. So your comment on that particular poll also as you give us your closing remarks.
Well, I think people are entitled to their opinion, as has been said, if they feel that maybe MRC represent what they think is affecting them. But one thing I have to say here, as one of the causes of things that we see people reacting and people demonstrating and people sometimes taking very extreme stands and positions is because of historical injustices. And I think one of the reasons why we had to review our constitutions, and it's clearly provided for in the Constitution, historical injustices have to be addressed. And when we do not create and allow avenues, proper avenues for those genuine historical injustices, like some of the issues that MRC raises, they are genuine, but maybe the way they are being raised is wrong. So those avenues should be created. But allow me to say this, Sophia, in closing. I can see a very dangerous trend here, even as we're talking now in media. It's like we are almost concluding that whoever killed the pastors belongs to the other faith. And whoever burned the church belongs to the other faith. Whoever killed the sheikhs belongs to the other faith. I think this is very dangerous. Let a criminal be treated as a criminal, as that individual as a criminal. Let him be dealt with by the law. And let us not blanketly condemn a community. When a person rapes, let us not say a Christian or a Muslim rapist. Let us say this rapist, because that is a crime. A crime is a crime. Because the way we are talking now is like we are almost concluding that whoever killed the pastor must be belonging to it. It could have been anybody. It could have even been one of the followers. It has happened in places here. So I think this is wrong, profiling other people. Like now Muslims, like particularly the women, the Muslim women, I really sympathize with them. They've been profiled all over. The kind of screening, you go into a supermarket, anybody who comes in dressed as a Muslim, you find that they are already profiled. The screening is even more intense. Even myself, depending on how I'm dressed, the screening is more intense. So all said and done, we have a country to protect. We have a county. The senator is talking about his county. Let me talk about the whole country. Kenya, we don't want to see bloodshed in this country. We don't want to see religious tension building in this country. And we need to address all the root causes. We don't want to whitewash. We need to address all the root causes. Why are the youth behaving in the way they are behaving? Why is the police behaving the way they are behaving? Why has the confidence in our police and our law enforcement agencies, why has it been eroded? How can they win back that confidence? How can people have confidence in the law enforcement agencies and the government? So we need to address this. And again, across the religious divide, I want to repeat again, let's talk with each other, not at each other.
All right. Thank you, Sheikh Lithome. Finally, Bishop, let me come to you as we close the show. And I have to put this to you. Do you still hold that your ushers need to be armed with AK-47s for your and your congregation's security? And also, going forward, what are your thoughts in terms of what needs to be done to ensure this simmering problem does not escalate to levels that we would not want for Mombasa and any part of the country?
Okay, what I'd say is, my prayer is that we should never reach that level where now we need to take the security in our own hands, because we have government security machinery, we pay tax, we have a right to be provided with security, and I pray that the government is going to take this thing seriously, because people on the ground are desperate and people actually are asking questions about what is going on. So I know now that we have talked, the government is going to move in very quickly and provide both visible and invisible security, so that the confidence of the people, not just in Coast, not just in Mombasa, but in the country as a whole, is provided for. And on something else, about these rowdy youths who have always been causing chaos on the roads, I believe every young man comes from a certain family, presumably with a father and a mother. And I believe if the parents in their homes took upon themselves to teach their children both the moral and the social ethics, then surely we don't have youth all over the town causing mayhem and havoc. Because at the end of the day, these young people will go back to a certain home with a father and with a mother. So if those people, the parents, took responsibility over their children, I believe this problem would also end.
Bishop, I'll still ask that question one more time. Would you take back those statements, or do you still want those AK-47s? I must ask.
I repeat, I say, that is a last resort. As I said, the right of self-defense cannot be taken away by any constitution anywhere in the world. Okay. We are trusting that the government is going to provide security. All right. And then, if it is not possible, and we still have people around with bad minds, then I still say, why not? And I close by saying, because many people disagree, that is, you should not have guns in church. My question to them is, God is all-powerful, God is holy and is righteous, He is all-powerful, but yet His angels carry swords. Even in heaven, angels carry swords. And a sword is not a walking stick, it is a weapon.
All right, thank you very much, Lambert Mbela, Bishop, Redeemed Gospel Church, coming to us live from Mombasa. Thank you for being part of our discussion this morning. And in studio, Hassan Omar, Senator Mombasa County, and of course, Sheikh Ibrahim Lithome. Thank you all for being part of our discussion this morning, a very important one. And we hope in coming days there'll be more conversations amongst the leaders, the different stakeholders in the county to ensure this does not escalate. I think the bottom line is just really to ensure this does not get out of hand. Thank you all. And at this point, I just want to go through some of your feedback. Remember, we're also asking you to be part of our discussion this morning. We're asking what should be done to diffuse religious tension in the coast, at the coast, and quite a number of your feedback already coming through. We have very interesting. Kimani saying there's a problem of religious radicalization in Kenya, both extremists in terms of Christians, evangelicals, and Muslims as well. Each has a role to play. We must be careful about the messages we're each preaching. Pacific Aziz says, very, very interesting discussion here. May God bless Kenya and may he remove the hatred in our hearts. I agree. May we all just have love for one another and that religious tolerance as well. The Willie says the problem is not the 2% radical Muslim, but the 98% that keep quiet. Those are your thoughts.